Street Fighter, the movie, the game for Sony PlayStation, also released for Sega Saturn in 1995. This was the first Street Fighter game to grace the original Sony PlayStation platform. Something to think about for a bit there. Anyways, yes, they made a video game based on a movie based on a video game, and they put it on the console. Why is that a surprise to anybody? Street Fighter the movie, the game, originally began life as an arcade title that was developed by Incredible Technologies, a sort of fighting game hybrid between Street Fighter-esque gameplay mechanics and Mortal Kombat-esque digitized graphics and auto-combo things. The end result was a spectacular mess of a game that never made it to home consoles. Instead, what you got in Street Fighter the movie, the game, the console, game, real battle on film game, or whatever the hell you people want to call this thing, is a retooled version that still has the digitized actors, plays more like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, the most recent iteration of Street Fighter 2 at the time. Some basic moves, some special moves, a single super combo, as well as additional enhanced EX moves, for lack of a better term, that can be triggered by pressing 2 buttons instead of 1 when performing certain special moves. The end result here is a somewhat more playable game, but not much more than that really. There are 4 main modes of play in Street Fighter the movie, the game. Movie Battle, Street Battle, Versus Battle, and Trial Battle. Street Battle is your usual arcade mode where you fight 8 randomly selected computer opponents before facing off against the fearsome foursome of Zangief, DJ, Sagat, and M. Bison. Versus mode is your usual versus mode with a second player, and Trial mode is your typical survival mode where you beat as many folks as possible in a single game. The main mode of Street Fighter the movie is the Movie Battle. Essentially the game's story mode where you play as Guile and you have 50 minutes to track down Bison's Shadowloo headquarters and rescue the hostages, usually done by beating people up and going on alternate paths and things of that nature. Unfortunately, if you suck as Guile, you won't get much out of this mode because that's all you get to play as, and, well, it's a bit of a shame really. Now, full disclosure, I actually do have the Saturn version on hand, and yes, I have 2 versions of the exact same game. Again, why are you so surprised? And between the 2 versions, I find the Saturn version has slightly better response time. Control in general is not too bad here, you could do your usual specials just fine, but sometimes there's a hiccup in response time when performing certain specials. Issues I never got on the Saturn version, and certainly not with other Street Fighter games on the PS1. It's an otherwise minor nibble that pops up only every once in a while and doesn't really affect the experience all that often, but it's one I thought was worth mentioning. Much like the arcade original, Street Fighter the movie utilizes digitized graphics, basically meaning all your fighters portrayed by the movie actors in costume, doing all the moves, poses, and all that jazz. Doesn't really say much since the character sprites are smaller, look faded color-wise, and have somewhat wonky animation due to a significant number of missing frames, of which the arcade original had plenty of for somewhat smooth animation. I imagine this is similar to a process done with the much later HD Remix release, where they replaced all the old Street Fighter 2 sprites with new ones without adding more frames to make the animation smoother, so as to not throw off the timing of the gameplay. But while it looked somewhat fine in HD Remix, your mileage may vary in that regard, here, not so much. Oh well, at the very least, there are more background stages featured here, one for each character, and I do prefer these over the arcade stages. Despite the lower resolution, these look a little better and do a far better job of recreating various set pieces from the actual movie, such as Bison's private quarters, Guile's morgue, or the cage, to name a couple examples. Sound-wise, it's a thing. The arcade game had the movie actors do the voice bites for the game, but this version tosses that all aside for Japanese voice actors, and even years later, this was an odd... This sounds weird, let's just put it that way. The announcer guy they got for this game made me miss the Big Bird announcer from the Super Street Fighter games. At least he's not doing running commentary during the matches, which is a plus in my book. Music-wise, other than the main movie theme used in the opening video and the main menu, the music in Street Fighter the movie feels rather generic. Nothing great, nothing terrible, really just kind of meh. And of course it plays right off the CD, which means the music fades out and replays right after. Again, meh. Overall, Street Fighter the movie, the game for PlayStation and also Saturn, is a competent enough recreation of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, using some ill-fitting graphical assets and trying to make something out of a project that would have been a colossal cluster muck had they tried to port over the arcade game as it originally was. At best, it plays like a typical Street Fighter 2 game with a couple nibbles, but nothing too game-breaking, and was enough to hold folks over until the release of Street Fighter Alpha a couple months later. However, if you just want good Super Turbo on the PlayStation 1, the Street Fighter Collection is a thing, and of course if you want to go beyond that, the current Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection is also a thing, and this particular title ends up being more of a novelty than anything. Still, I had fun with it. It's not a miserably bad game, it's just an intriguing curiosity, and that's probably its best place in the world today.